All right, it's all set, brother Walt.
Yeah, it was just one of my ears. The Lord gave me two, so I can still function, accordingly. So I wanted to mention too that Joan's not on today. Today is what would have been Brother Chuck's 89th birthday. So she and his son and daughter-in-law are celebrating his birthday in absentia, I guess. So so that's where she's not on today. But anyhow, we're here. And I'm glad for that. And with that thought, yesterday I had a conversation with Brother Larry Ally. Maybe many of you don't know him. He's a brother from McKees Rock, Pennsylvania, and he and I go back many, many years. In fact, I first had a relationship with his dad, who has since passed on. But Larry and I have touched base with us occasionally. But I saw that he is recently recovering from having a triple bypass. And about 22 years ago, I had a quadruple bypass. So us bypass guys, we compare notes. So he and I were comparing bypass events and recovery thing. And it just got my mind kind of reflecting upon our heart. This miraculous fist-sized thing that God created and put in each and every one of us to sustain our life. This fist-sized pumping station, pumps about, from what I understand, about 100,000 times a day, and it pumps around 2,000 gallons of blood through about 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our system. I mean, it's just incredible, how God puts this stuff together and gives us life from that. And what I want to kind of segue in today is not necessarily the physical heart that God's put within us to be who we are and to accomplish what we can accomplish in our lives. God values the heart more so in a different way, in such a way that it provides our spiritual well-being. It's a source of our mental and emotional and moral center of our life, this thing called the heart. And there's several pieces of scripture throughout the Book of Mormon and the Bible that I want to kind of reflect upon and focus on this heart that God has given us from a spiritual perspective. I'll start with King Benjamin, second chapter of Mosiah, ninth verse says here, and these are the words which he did speak in council to be written, saying, My brethren, all that have assembled yourselves together, you can hear my words, which I shall speak unto you this day, he says, for I have not commanded you to come up hither to trifle with my words that I shall speak, but that you should hearken unto and open your ears, that you may hear, and that your hearts may understand, and your minds that the mysteries of God may be unfolded into your view. So Benjamin had the insight that not only should we be listening to the Lord, but we should be opening our hearts because we have ears to hear and hearts to understand. And that the most significant thing in here too is that he's talking about these people. Don't don't kind of blow off what I'm saying. Don't trifle what the words I'm going to be able to say. He goes on to this long lesson in life, King Benjamin does to the people, but he starts with them focusing on their heart, their spiritualness of their heart. That if your heart is right with the Lord, you'll be able to understand the mysteries that He will prepare for in our lives. And I got to thinking about that. That is really something that maybe I don't know about you. Maybe I don't concentrate enough on preparing my heart to understand the Lord a little bit better. I mean, there's so many things that occur in our lives that are so confusing, and so befuddling sometimes, and we struggle in our mind's sake to try to figure it out. Where I think the scriptures that we're going to talk about today are saying, you know what, just relax a little bit. Instead of thinking about it too much, kind of put it down in your heart and let me work with you through the understanding of your heart, in terms of what you see transpiring in your life. Um, Writer in Proverbs, fourth chapter, 20th and the 23rd verses. 20th verse says, My son, attend to my words, incline thine ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep them in the midst of their heart, he said. Again, similar to what King Benjamin's talked about, you know, you know, listen to what I'm telling you, but get your heart ready to understand. And this is almost the same thing. He says, uh, incline your ear to hear my sayings and let those things not depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart, he says, for they are life unto those who find them and health to all of their flesh. Keep thy heart with diligence, he says, for out of it are all the issues of life. He's saying, get your spiritual heart in order. Again, like King Benjamin said, listen to what I'm saying, and get your heart prepared. So as you prepare your spiritual heart to what life is around you, you might understand things a little bit better. Proverbs says similar thing in that situation. A healthy spiritual heart, foundation of a blessed life, basically. And within that, it says, there are all the issues of life. It simplifies perhaps the madness that is around us sometimes if we can get our heart right with the Lord, that, we'll understand things a little bit better, because everything in our life is going to be generated by the heart that he blesses us with. When Samuel was looking for a king, right? And the Lord kind of sent him to the family of Jesse and said, okay, here's the boys. Take a look at all these guys. And he looked at them all and kind of rejected, all that he saw. And he says, you got any more? He said, well, I do have one more. He's out in the field right now. Let's bring him in here. And the Lord said to Samuel in this situation, he says, look not on the countenance or the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not a man as a man. The Lord seeth not as man, for man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart.
Yeah.
Again, brings it back home again. There's three scriptures there that are talking to you about what the Lord looks at in each and every one of us. He's looking at us all the time in terms of the decisions we make, the situations that we find ourselves in, and all those things. But he's looking in our hearts all the time to see what we're made of and what makes up our hearts, what makes up your heart. It's honesty, integrity, commitment, consistency, attitudes, responsibility, and the truth. The Lord's looking at all those things that are the makeup of our spiritual heart. Because within that, he says, that's all the issues of life are wrapped up in that situation. So I'm looking at you. I'm not looking at you like I would look at a man. I'm looking at you in terms of what makes up the essence of your heart. Not necessarily this pumping station that's putting blood through our systems, but I'm looking at the makeup of your heart and all these qualities and traits that I'm trying to teach you, that I've shown you when I walked the earth for all this time, preaching this gospel, and not only talking about it, but showing you what the gospel is. The writer in Proverbs, I go back to him and say, keep thy heart with all diligence, he says, for out of it are all the issues of life. That stuck with me. Diligence. What is diligence? Diligence is a steady, an earnest, and an energetic approach to life. Staying the course. Keeping your spiritual heart with the ability to stay the course no matter what the circumstances are that surround us. And in doing that, it will direct what we see and what we hear and what we say in our lives. He goes on to say in the 24th verse in that Proverbs chapter, put away from thee a froward mouth and perverse lips far from thee. What's a froward mouth? Well, that's one that's disobedient. That's one that's disrespectful. That's one in opposition. And what's perverse? What's keep your perverse lips out from thee. He says that's morally rebelling against God. So again, as our heart is right with the Lord, that type of performance and that type of behavior is not there. It's void in our particular life in that way. Look at thine eyes, let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before you. What's he saying? If you're focused, if your heart is focused on me, where all your issues of life are, if you're focused on that, you're not going to have distractions that take you off to the right and to the left and wherever you're going to go. You're going to stay the course of what my gospel says it needs to be for you. And the last one here is ponder thy path of thy feet and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left, and remove thy feet from evil. That word ponder, I know that word kind of gets in my head, what ponder? Do you ponder? I sometimes am quick to get to the next step. I'm ready to act upon the next reaction that I have to have in life. But with this heart, the spiritual heart that the Lord gives me, he's saying, that's how man looks at things. As he told Samuel, I don't look at things that way. I look at things within your heart. So it tells me that, what, I got to kind of regroup in my attitude of the way I do things. And maybe before I step out and react to what happens around me, maybe I need to stop and ponder more. Ponder, think carefully and deeply, it says, to meditate, slow down, you know, maybe use that phrase that we've all heard before we want to act, we might want to ask the question, what would Jesus do in this situation? Because I don't do that enough. It's more like, okay, it's time for Walt to act, you know, and that's kind of going back up to being froward and perverse and, having distractions that take me away from the intent that the Lord is preparing me for. Remember, we talked before, and I say this a lot, this is the time for us to prepare for our salvation, right? This is the time we got to get it right. And thank God that there's mercy and grace and forgiveness, because as the Lord knows, as much as our heart's pumping that blood, sometimes our heart is pumping, revenge and other things in our life. And what he's telling us in this Proverbs here is to slow down and let your heart do the work. Just not overreact for yourself, but just allow the teachings, allow the Spirit, allow the experience, allow the testimonies, all those good things that you've been exposed to in your life, put that in your heart and let that go before you go off on some tangent, something like that. Now, in the Book of Mormon, again, we go back to that, there's Alma. And Alma talks about the heart a lot. And he's not talking about it in the physical sense. He's talking about the spiritual sense of your heart. And bear with me here as I read some of these things here. So, 5th chapter of Alma, 6th and 7th verses, it says, and now, behold, I say unto you, my brethren, that you belong to this church. Have you sufficiently retained in remembrance the captivity of your fathers? Yea, and have you sufficiently retained in remembrance his mercy and long suffering towards them? And moreover, have you sufficiently retained in remembrance that he has delivered their souls from hell? Behold, he changed their hearts. Yea, he awakened them out of a deep sleep. And they woke unto God. And behold, they were in the midst of darkness. Nevertheless, their souls were illuminated by the light of the everlasting word. And they were encircled about by the bands of death and the chains of hell, and everlasting destruction did await them. He's saying, you know what? They were able to endure. They were able to kind of get through it all because they believed in him, you know. And the Lord had mercy and long suffering to them. And he said, he changed their hearts. It says, he awakened them out of a deep sleep, and they awoke unto God. How much of that do we need to put in our life? How much do we need to be awakened? How much do we have to kind of get out of this deep sleep that we're in about what's around us in the world today? Because we talk about it many, many times. I mean, we look at the news and we look at the world and we see what's going on, and it's a depressing thing with absolutely no hope at all. And that was the same thing in these people's time. But he said that the Lord changed their heart and he awakened them out of a deep sleep and they awoke unto God. And that's the message I think that we're trying to impart today, that, you know what, maybe we're taking a nap. I don't know how deep of a sleep we're in, but I think sometimes we allow our hearts to go off on a tangent here. And what God wants is the obedience. He wants the experience that we have of knowing who he is to kind of get us through, get us beyond. And if we're dozing off, to wake us up again, and allow us to continue to move forward with what he wants us to do. Alma talks about redeeming love. He says here, now behold, I ask of you, my brethren of the church, have you spiritually been born of God? Have you received his image in your countenance? Have you experienced the mighty change in your hearts? Again, reflecting how we need to change how our heart works in the realm of the spiritualness of who we are. I'm asking myself, I'm asking you this kicker question, that Alma asked. He says, and now behold, I say unto you, my brethren, if you've experienced a change of heart, and if you felt to sing the song of redeeming love, I would ask, do you feel so now? Again, maybe an awareness as we plod through life with the things that happen to us again, that we need to slow down a bit, because we've all had testimonies of God's redeeming love in our life. All of us on this screen, have testimonies how God has plucked us up, picked us up, and kind of got us out of the doldrums and the threats and the pain and suffering that we've had in our life. And he's given us a testimony that, you know what? He did change my heart. Every one of us have had a changed heart. When we made that commitment to love and serve the Lord all the rest of the days of our life, those questions that we get asked when we got dumped in the water there, our hearts were changed then. But then life starts, and then we've got to kind of get distracted. Our eyes go off to different places. Our ears are hearing different things. And what the Lord's saying, get back on track again. If you felt sing the song of redeeming love, can you do so now? That's maybe a question I got to ask myself every day. Maybe you. Yesterday was not a day of redeeming love for me when I had to go to the emergency room. Oh, that was not fun. But today, after I rested last night, I can wake up and say, you know what, Lord, you got me through this particular annoying thing, And in the grand scheme of things in life and what's going on to a lot more people in much more situations, I thank the Lord that he's given me a heart to thank him, to know that, well, you know what, I can move on another day here or something like that. It's a process that we have to work on, this changed heart of ours, because we go back to the proverb thing again. It says, our hearts, is the within our heart is life. All of our things in our life kind of reflect upon our hearts, and maybe it's a process that we all need to kind of start over again. Proverbs 4:23 says, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Your spiritual heart, my spiritual heart, out of our spiritual hearts become the issues of what we're going to face in our life and our ability to get through it all. Nothing else is going to make it happen. Daily, little steps, focusing on the Lord in all things. And you know what? And we get through. One of my favorite scripture verses, you've heard it before, you're going to hear it again, and you're going to hear it now. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not upon your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your paths. That's all I got to say about it today. Think about your spiritual heart. Think about the thing that the Lord's looking at in you and I every day. Thank God that he gives us this pumping machine that gets us to get up in the morning and go at it again, because without that, we'd have nothing. But beyond that, it's that spiritual heart that he's looking at, and he's trying to help us kind of make that as strong as it can be, and we can get through life, perhaps in an easier way. So, Jeremy, I'm done.
I have to unmute myself here. I enjoyed the message from Brother Walt today, and as a confirmation, I'll just share that earlier this week, last couple of days, in fact, as I was driving, I thought about how we appear on the outside, and it's easier to make yourself look okay on the outside. We can put on our dress clothes and our tie and come to church, and we can avoid the obvious uh, missteps. Be careful about our tone and our language, and do the things that would make us outwardly appear as godly, as righteous. But really, what we should be working on as we come to church and as we live our lives day by day is the inward man that Walt spoke about. Just like with David, someone who had a heart that would be pleasing to God. And that takes a little more work. That's not quite so easy to put ourselves together. And yet, the scripture gives us this indication that the truth, that joy, love, these things that God has can enter our hearts. And as Walt was talking about the message of King Benjamin, his sermon that day was about how a mighty change of heart can occur within us. And Brother Jerry Valenti this week was doing one of his videos, and he talked about how sometimes we find ourselves doing the wrong things. And it's not enough just to maybe avoid the sin, but also change our heart. It's necessary to actually change in the sense that we don't even desire those things that are sinful. And that struck me because I think that's a deeper change. And wasn't Benjamin and didn't Alma talk about a mighty change? It's not just a little change, it's the whole thing. It's all the way down. And if we change in that sense that we don't even desire, even as it says in the Book of Mormon, they no longer desire to do evil. And the desires of our hearts today can be changed and can be set upon the things of God. And if we have that condition within our hearts, then we find that joy as a result. So I think that's a wonderful message for us to think about, and it's digging deeper sometimes to get to that desire level, which is really one of the core functions of a heart. What's your heart's desire? And the other thing I'll just mention as Walt was speaking today is sometimes we have heartache, and heartache is, I would say, perhaps maybe the most painful thing you can go through in life. Maybe it's from regrets or mourning the loss of something or someone, or maybe it's just something missing in your life. But the Lord not only changes our hearts, he heals them, and he can bring that comfort to soothe our heartache and replace that sadness, that sorrow with joy. So as we approach the Lord faithfully in our lives, I think these are the things he offers us. And it is a good reminder for us just to take stock of where our hearts are to ponder that and think about what we need to do, that heart work that's yet to be done in our lives. So appreciate the message and the encouragement today. And we'll go ahead and open it up for testimony for anyone who wants to share their thoughts today and what the Lord is doing in your life. It's always an uplift to see him working in your lives and the things that are that he's blessing you with. So we'll do that now at this time.